My name is Ginny Holmes. I'm 63. I live in a house with a terrace in Charlottesville, Virginia, where the air smells of jasmine in the spring and hot pollen in July. And I get in the way. That's what my daughter Erin said. Not directly, of course. She always wrapped it up, "You're too involved, Mom. You react too strongly. You're just too present." But I heard what wasn't said aloud. I raised her alone. After Henry died, a heart attack right behind the wheel, she was only 10. I held her hand when she didn't want to go to school. I learned to tie her bows while running my own business. I restored interiors in old homes all over Albemarle County. Sometimes I took Erin with me. She'd sit on the windowsill and draw while I repainted walls or discussed fabric choices with yet another stubborn client. I was both father and mother, comfort and discipline. Home. When she got a scholarship to NYU, I sold some furniture and my old china set to pay for her first rent in Brooklyn. I didn't complain, even when I was lonely. Even when at Christmas she'd call later and then just text, "Hi Mom, all good, love you, talk soon." I remember the first time I met Brandon, her fiancé. It was at dinner in one of those Soho restaurants that serve tiny portions and bring the bill like you're dining with the French Queen. I wore a gray-blue dress and even styled my hair. He shook my hand and said, "Do you still work?" Not what do you do, not where, but still. Then they started speaking their language about marketing strategies, about how, "Mom, you probably don't know this, but nobody puts TVs in bedrooms anymore." And somewhere between soup and dessert, I realized I had been cut out of the frame. Quietly, deliberately. I still lived in Charlottesville, in the house where Erin took her first steps, where Henry recorded lullaby tapes for her. But every call was short. Every visit felt like a duty. I tried not to get in the way, I really did. I never showed up unannounced, didn't give unsolicited advice, didn't even ask to see the grandkids. But I still felt it every time I entered a room, someone mentally sighed. There she is again. Sometimes I think my fault was not disappearing right after college, not turning into a voicemail message you can listen to later. Sometimes I wonder maybe I should have been weaker. Let her save me, instead of being the one who still stands, who still paints the walls herself, who still pays for everything, who is her own support. But I'm who I am. I am a mother. And yes, I am present, because I love, because I don't know any other way. Then came that letter. That very day when you realize your presence is no longer just unnecessary, it's unwanted. And that's another story. But it began here with that look from Brandon, with Erin's cold words, and with what seemed to be my big mistake. I was just too much. I usually wake up early. My day begins with a strong cup of coffee black, like my self-Ironyand checking my email. Not social media, not the news, email. Because I'm still old-fashioned enough to believe important things come there. Bills, reservations, and letters from my daughter. It was Wednesday, 6:42 a.m. I remember the time because the moment I saw the name Erin Holmes in the sender line, my heart beat differently. It wasn't the usual Pinterest newsletter, nor a mom send me that pie recipe, you know the one. It was a letter. Subject, about the wedding. I opened it, slowly, as if I suspected. "Mom, Brandon and I have talked a lot and agreed it would be better for everyone if you don't come to the wedding. This is our day, and we want it to be calm, without tension. I hope you understand, E." I read it again. Then again. I even refreshed the page. Maybe it was a mistake, phishing a duplicate. In number, it was from her, my daughter, my only child. The one I taught to tie her shoelaces and bake cornbread from her grandmother's recipe. The one we decorated the Christmas tree with every December even, in the years when money was only enough for a Costco garland and 3 oranges. The one I carried in my arms when she broke her ankle at 9 during a school play. Now, don't come. No call. No explanation. No. Mom, we need to talk. Just a text. Official, distant, almost like an airline support message. "Sorry, your flight has been canceled. Have a nice day." I sat on the edge of the bed. My coffee had gone cold. My fingers automatically reached for the phone. To call. To hear her voice. Maybe it was a mistake? Maybe it was a prank? Maybe someone convinced her? The dial tone rang. 1, 2, 3. Subscriber unavailable. Please leave a message. I didn't leave one. What would I say? Hi, this is Mom, the one you rejected. I'd love to know what expression was on your face when you hit send. I hung up. Saturday in silence. The house was too big, the walls too white, the air too loud. Something inside me cracked. Not anger, not even resentment, but a deep, quiet pain, like being gently, slowly pushed out of my own life. Like I was a page torn from a book so that nothing would interfere with the new chapter. Am I a burden? After everything? Those words wouldn't let go. I repeated them like a mantra, as if saying them one more time would return my meaning, return my place, return my right. I didn't know what was worse, the phrase "don't come" itself, or how easily she wrote it. No trembling words, no, "Mom, this is hard for me to say, but..." Number just, "don't come." I scrolled down the letter. No attached photos, no "I love you." Just a dry period. And you know what hurts the most? I would have come anyway. Even if I had to stand in the very back, in the corner, even if they didn't let me speak, didn't seat me at the table, didn't call me mother of the bride. I would have come anyway. Because it's her day. And she is my daughter. But now it's my day too. Because everything has changed. Forever. The next morning, I told everything to my friends, not because I wanted pity, just because I couldn't keep it inside. We met, as usual, at a small cafe near Charlottesville's historic district, the kind that serves biscuits and eggs and calls it Southern Comfort. I put my phone on the table. "Look at this," I said. The words wouldn't come out smoothly, like I was that girl who got kicked out of the club. May, my neighbor from the porch, was the first to pick up the phone. She read slowly. Her face paled. "Is this a joke?" she whispered. Pat, who usually doesn't take anything to heart, swore loudly in true Virginian fashion. "You raised her alone. You were her mom, dad, and the school bus driver all at once? Ginny, without you, she'd be in New York subway sitting on the wrong train and ending up in Queens." I listened, sitting as if none of this was about me. I felt like a woman in an old dress, standing in the middle of a boutique being told, "This style just doesn't suit you." I smiled. Quietly. Almost unnoticed, and said, "I'm not going to complain." May's eyes went wide. "You're not going to what?" "I don't want this to become another story about a mother ruining her daughter's wedding." "That's not you ruining it, Ginny. It's her," Pat objected. "Maybe," I said, "but let that be on her conscience, not mine." They didn't understand right away. They wanted drama, an explosion, a call to a radio show, a Judge Judy episode. But I had other plans. That same evening, I came home. The invitation still hung on the living room wall, the one with the embossed gold lettering on thick white cardstock. "Aaron and Brandon invite you to celebrate their day of love." I approached it, carefully took it down. My hands didn't tremble. I folded it in half, then again. Put it in the drawer where I kept letters from Henry and Aaron when she was a child, those where she drew us together on popsicle sticks and signed "Mommy plus me equals team." And you know what? I didn't cry. I felt clarity. It was like a sunny morning after a storm. I knew now I didn't have to break myself to be a good enough mom. I had already been crossed out, which meant I didn't owe anyone to be convenient anymore. I stood in front of the hallway mirror, looked at my reflection, the wrinkles, the gray at my temples, eyes still steel hard, and whispered to myself, "They think I won't come. Fine. I will come. But not alone. I never planned to go to the wedding. Not after that letter." But then I remembered, I'm not obligated to accept their decision if it's unfair. Sometimes respect for yourself matters more than silence. So I threw open my suitcase. That same old Louis Vuitton Henry gave me on our anniversary, back when we finally had some extra money and didn't count every dollar. I stood in front of the open closet, thinking about how to pack for a life that just erased you. My hand reached for a simple black dress. Then a soft beige cardigan. I put everything back. Number. If I'm going, I won't look like someone who was told, "Don't come." I'll be the woman who came anyway. The next day, I went to Tyson's Galleria Mall in McLean. And I found it. The dress? Creamy blue, with a delicate silk belt that made my waist look less tired. It looked like it was from an old Hollywood movie-annable, not flashy. The salesgirl, about 20, asked, "Wedding for someone close?" I smiled. You could say that. And then I realized I didn't just need a dress. I needed a companion. Not to spite anyone, but to remind myself, I have my own story, my own people, my own dignity. I called Mr. Porter. Arthur Porter was one of Henry's clients, owner of a contemporary art gallery in Soho. Once, Henry and I helped him with a lease agreement. He was a widower in his 70s, always in a tweed jacket, with eyes that saw more than he said. Polite, but reserved. Until the day Henry and I brought him an apricot pie. Since then, he sent us a bottle of wine every Christmas. I dialed his number. "Arthur, this is Ginny Holmes. I know this is unexpected, but I have a question." I told him. Not everything. Just the essentials. About the wedding. The letter. New York. He was silent for a second, then laughed. "Ginny, you know I love stories with a twist. Of course you should come. I have a spare bedroom above the gallery, and, if you allow me, I'd be happy to keep you company." I didn't know what I was expecting. But not that. I smiled. Aaron's going to be surprised. The next day, I left for New York. The trip from Charlottesville took almost 9 hours. I listened to old Tony Bennett records, sipped coffee from a thermos, and remembered how Henry and I first came to New York 1984, me in a striped coat, him wearing a hat he hated but put on for me. When I arrived in Soho, Arthur was waiting at the door. Looking like we were going not to a wedding, but to a Carnegie Hall premiere. When he saw me in the dress, he said, "Now I understand why your husband looked at you like the sun rises in you." I looked away. Tears, they come unexpectedly, even after all these years. But that night, as I lay down to sleep, I told myself, I'm not coming to ruin the wedding. I'm coming to remind them that I have a voice too. And it will be heard. When I called Marcella, the phone felt hot in my hand. We hadn't spoken in almost 3 years. After Henry's funeral, she'd gone back to Chicago, and since then only Christmas postcards and a few polite messages on Facebook. I hesitated for a long time, gathering courage. Then I just pressed call. "Ginny?" Her voice was the same as ever, firm, with a slight rasp and a hint of sarcasm, like she was listening and judging my shoes at the same time. "Yes. Hi, Marcella. I need to talk about something." "So, you finally decided to move to Chicago and drink martinis all morning?" I smirked. "Number. But I'm going to Erin's wedding." "You? After she sent you that letter?" "Yes, I'm going anyway. And I was thinking, maybe you could come with me?" There was a long pause on the other end. Then, "Are you sure you want me to show up there?" "I'm sure Erin doesn't want it, but maybe that's for the best." Marcella laughed, the kind of laugh only women who have nothing left to lose have. "Well then, if she doesn't want a mother, she can inherit the father's side." We met at the gallery where I was staying with Arthur. Marcella stepped out of the taxi wearing a long eggplant-colored coat, a silk scarf, and heavy earrings. She always knew how to make an entrance. Even buying produce at the farmer's market looked like a theater scene with her. "You look like a woman who came to claim what's hers," she said, looking at me. I nodded. "And you look like a woman who can set the whole room on fire without raising her voice. We'll see who loses control first. I'm betting on the bride." When we arrived at the ceremony, a beautiful old mansion on the edge of Brooklyn, white tents and live music on the lawn, I felt my heart pounding somewhere in my throat. I took Marcella's arm. She looked at me. "Are you sure?" "No," I answered, "but it doesn't matter." At the entrance were people from the coordination team. A young woman in a pink suit with a tablet. "Hello. May I see your invitations?" I handed mine over. She scanned it, nervously. Then Marcella's visita. Her name wasn't on the lists or on the tablet, but she just smiled. "I'm the bride's father's sister. That should be enough." The coordinator tried to say something, but Marcella's look stopped her. That look only comes from women who survived a divorce, a brother's death, and a tax audit all in 1 year. We passed through. Across the lawn, under the music, passed guests holding champagne glasses. Some recognized me, whispered. Some even nodded kindly. But I didn't look around then. I felt it, step by step. I was reclaiming my place, not in their event in my own life. Marcella whispered, "This wedding is going to have a better prelude than any jazz band." And suddenly I laughed. Quietly at first, then louder. It was the first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. Not from anger, not from pain, but from that rare feeling when you're no longer afraid to be yourself. We sat down at a table. Not by the restroom. Not in a corner, but right in the center. Like two women who aren't going to ask permission just to exist. The wedding started like clockwork. Guests took their seats, the piano quieted, replaced by soft violin notes. White roses, ribbons on the chairs, the bride in a dress that cost as much as my first car. And everyone smiling. Everyone involved. I stood near the entrance, slightly apart, trying to breathe steadily. Maybe naive, but inside me lived a tiny hope. Maybe, just maybe, someone would say my name. The first speech was by the groom's father, Joe. He always had a tendency to speak loudly and off-topic. He raised his glass, hesitated slightly, then said, "Today is the day two wonderful families unite. Thank you to everyone who raised such amazing children. Especially grateful to Sarah's family, our bride's family, for their love and support." Sarah's family. Not a word about the groom's mother. Not a word about the woman who wiped Erin's nose when she was scared to go to first grade. About the one who held her when our dog died, who worked 2 jobs until Henry got a promotion. Then came the Aunt Sarah's sister. She spoke about how this beautiful couple met in college, how much love filled their home. She thanked teachers, friends, even the librarian. My daughter's name echoed among candles and camera flashes. But my name nowhere. Marcella sat beside me. I felt her fingers squeeze my hand tightly. She didn't look at me, only forward. And then, quietly but so firmly that I almost heard it as a verdict. "This isn't your shame, Ginny." I looked away. For a moment, it felt like I didn't exist. Like I was a shadow. Like I'd accidentally ended up here and the security guard would soon come and say, "Excuse me, ma'am, but you clearly don't belong here." But I stayed standing. I didn't cry, didn't leave, didn't plead. I just stood there while they talked about friends who became family, about support, about roots and wings. As if Erin's wings grew all by themselves. As if she came into the world thanks to love and light, and not 16 hours of labor after which I couldn't walk properly for a month. As if my existence was something awkward, uncomfortable, unnecessary. I looked at the bride. At my daughter. She looked happy. But not once all evening did she look my way. And I suddenly felt not anger, not pain, but clarity rising inside me. They may never say my name. They may erase me from photos, speeches, memory. But do you know what can't be erased? Presence. I was here. I am here. And I see it all. The ceremony went according to plan. The violin began a new melody, and the white aisle was strewn with rose petals. Guests rose. Erin appeared in the archway, like a scene from a bridal agency commercial in an ivory dress, with a floor-length veil and earrings I once hid from her in a jewelry box when she was a teenager. She walked slowly, arm in arm with Sarah's father, a tall, balding man with a belly and the smirk of a smug banker broker. The man she now calls Dad, and that cuts deeper than any knife. I gripped the armrest of my chair. Marcella was silent. And then In the moment of absolute stillness, just as Aaron's step nearly matched the music, a voice rang out in the hall. "You look just like your father when I walked him down the aisle." People didn't immediately understand. Some turned their heads. Then, almost simultaneously, heads began to turn. Marcella stood up. Straight, calm, dramatic, as always. She adjusted her scarf and, looking straight ahead, raised her voice slightly. "I am Marcella Holmes, Henry's sister. I'm not a guest. I'm part of this DNA, and I'm here to see our family lie to itself once again." I felt time freeze. The guests were motionless. Whispers began. A man with a camera, either a photographer or a blogger, turned his lens directly at us. Erin stopped. Her face paled. The groom, uncertain, looked at the coordinator. And Sarah, the groom's mother, flushed so sharply her eyelid twitched. Marcella stepped closer, not to the altar, no, but to the first row. She didn't shout, didn't make a scene, but her voice was like a gunshot. "Once I walked my brother to his wedding. And, you know what, Aaron? Back then, we didn't exclude people just because they were inconvenient. We sat them down beside us." And she sat down in a free chair in the front row. No security approached. No one dared. I looked at my daughter. At this grown woman, dressed in a $6,000 gown, with a face where 5 emotions warred at once. Shame, fear, anger, confusion, and that tiny shadow of recognition. Recognition of the woman who, despite the "don't come" letters, still came. Not alone, but with the voice of her family, with memory, and with a dignity that requires no invitation, because it is innate. The room fell into a silence so deep you could hear a glass drop somewhere in the back. No one laughed, no one applauded. The music cut off half a beat too early. The guests stood frozen like mannequins, some with awkward smiles, others with wide eyes. The coordinator, dressed in black with an earpiece, frantically waved at the DJ. He hesitated, unsure whether to play jazz or Save the Last Dance for Me. Too late. Brandon, the groom, wiped his forehead. He approached the microphone. He tried to smile, but it came out somewhere between a grimace and a toothpaste commercial. "Well, his voice wavered. "Maybe someone has some family words before we move on to the cake?" Marcella didn't move. She just shrugged slightly, as if saying, "I said my piece. The rest isn't my concern." I felt the gazes turning back to me. The guests now understood. Some with sympathy, some just waiting for the next scene. And I stood up. Slowly, calmly. As if I wasn't standing amid strangers' speeches, where my name wasn't even mentioned. As if I hadn't read "Don't come" in a message from my daughter. As if I were the hostess of this hall. I walked to the microphone. The stage didn't shake beneath my feet, as I had feared. My hands didn't tremble. I looked out at the room. There was Erin sitting upright, arms crossed, her face no longer joyful but tense. I didn't read from a paper. I hadn't prepared. I simply said, "I loved you before and after all the weddings. That doesn't change, even when there's no place for me." A pause. 1 second. Another. Then I turned and left. Not to the table, not to my place by the exit. I walked straight to the door. Behind me, hesitant applause began. One person clapped, then another. But I didn't listen anymore. I knew one thing. That was my toast. Without wine, without flowery words, without silly jokes. Honest. Short. And heard. For the first time all evening, I didn't need an invitation to be heard. 3 days after the wedding, I sent a letter. No urgent markings. No drama. Just a plain cream envelope, slightly yellowed at the edges. I took it from Henry's drawer. He kept them for important occasions. I decided this was one. The address on the envelope was handwritten. Neat, with that slightly rounded script they taught in Catholic schools mid-century. Inside were 3 things. First, a small stack of photographs. Erin at 5, then 8, then a teenager in a purple hoodie standing by the school bus with Henry. He had his hand on her shoulder. She looked away, as if even then she knew how to keep her distance. Second, a short letter from him. A real one. Henry wrote it a year before he died, when he'd just started coughing but stubbornly insisted, "It's just allergies." The letter had only 3 lines. "Ginny, if she ever forgets who you are, remind her without malice. If she turns away, don't pull her back." A mother's love doesn't require approval, but dignity demands boundaries. I read those lines 10 times before putting the letter in the envelope. They burned me and set me free. And the third thing was a document. A copy of the deed to the house? The very one where Erin took her first steps. Where I rocked her in the chair while Henry fell asleep in the living room watching ESPN. Where she learned French and wrote essays on what family means to me. Now, that house belonged neither to me nor to her. I put it into a trust. A grant center for women over 50 who have lost support so they can get education, skills, housing. I named it Hope Spring House after the street where we lived. And after the hope that comes not when you're invited in, but when you choose to walk into a new life yourself. Below the deed, I wrote, "You wanted to be an adult. You made your choice. Now I choose too to be happy. Even without your permission. No reproach. No pleading. I no longer fight for a seat at a table that's long stopped being mine. I set a new one. For those forgotten. And for myself, finally. I don't know what she'll feel when she opens the envelope. Maybe anger. Maybe pain. Maybe nothing at all. But that's no longer my concern. The letter is sent. And I am free. Marcy and I returned to Charlottesville to where it all began. A town where the streets hold memories and hopes, where every cafe and bookstore feels like an old friend. We opened a small gallery cafe. We named it The Honest Table. The name wasn't chosen by chance here. There's no pretense, no masks. Here, people speak plainly and listen sincerely. On one wall hangs a large photo. It shows me, Henry, and little Erin smiling around the kitchen table where so many important conversations took place. Beneath the photo is the inscription. Love does not require an invitation. Everyone who walks in sees it. And maybe some think about their own tables and invitations that never came. I stand behind the counter looking at the picture and realize the most important thing is to be yourself. Sometimes being a bride or even a mother isn't what matters most. What matters is staying true to yourself. I smile and say to Marcy, "Sometimes being the bride isn't the point. The point is being yourself, even without the dress." She laughs and replies, "And even if no one's waiting for you, you can always choose where your home is." And truly, this home isn't just a place. It's a choice, freedom, and a love that doesn't ask for permission. This is how we live now, honestly, openly, with new friends and new hopes. Because real family is where you are accepted as you are. And that is my triumph.